Today I will be working on a 2003 Ford Econoline van, cargo van, 4.2 liter V6. Now what I'm going to be changing on this van is the radius arm, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you what all you're going to get involved with. Now as you can see, I have already changed everything on the driver side. Now, show you everything I've done to it. Now this coil spring and all this stuff, you can check it out. Whenever I've disassembled this, the coil spring wasn't in too bad a shape, so I sanded everything down, took a wire brush to it, primered it, painted it, made sure I got everything on it. This right here is what your radius arm looks like. This thing right here, that's the rear of the radius arm with the bushings on it, little rubber bushings. And up here is the front of it, goes right underneath this coil spring on this particular vehicle. It's got a radius arm bolt that runs through the bottom of it. Now your stabilizer bar is that piece right there. It runs all the way across through here. And it also runs into this piece that you call an I-beam. It hooks to this piece over here. Mechanics refer to it differently, but it's called a steering knuckle. Now all this stuff sways in together. Right there is your shock, so you look what you're having to deal with whenever you're first getting started here. Now I'm going to show you underneath here that this runs. This I-beam runs over there, and it runs right over beside where your oil pan is. That is what they call the pivot axle bushing. It's the pivot bolt that holds that side on. The driver's side is the shorter I-beam. The passenger side is the longer I-beam, and that's the bolt for it right down here. As you can see, this bolt right in here, that is the one for your passenger side. Now I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, if you're going to change one side, you might as well go ahead and inspect and change both sides while you're at it, if at all possible. Because if one thing goes out, one thing fails you, usually the other side isn't that far behind, or it won't be long until something linked to it needs to be changed, needs to be done. So you want to do it all possible, all of it at one time, if at all possible. Now changing both sides, doing it at one time is your best option, because you can get everything done, everything over with, fix everything that you're doing at one time, and you ain't got to worry about taking two different sides apart at one time. Now essentially, if you're going to do this, like I said, you're going to change both sides of it at one time, which means jacking up the vehicle on both sides. Make sure that you got something like a bottle jack, which I've got in the front, and I've got a jack stand that is here in the back, that is behind where the radius arm and everything is, leaving you room to get to that nut on the back side of that. But you've got to have it along your frame. That way it holds you front and back. And this thing, if I let that jack down, it will hold this van up back there. But you want to have something braced up on each side of it, preferably the same setup on the other side. Now bottle jacks, you can get your basic 12-ton bottle jack down there, 6-ton bottle jack at Walmart. Don't cost you that much, around 25, 30 bucks. So you can have those, you know, use your other jack, crank, you know, any type of jack and jack stands to make sure that this thing don't fall on you. And before you're going to be working on your vehicle, you know, it's always best to tell somebody, hey, you know, every 60 minutes, every 30 minutes, I'm going to be working on this. Text me, message me, you know, come check on me, so that you're not crushed underneath the vehicle, because hydraulic jacks can fail on you at any given time, and you want to be safe whenever you're doing this job. And first things first, you want to jack up your vehicle, then you want to put scotches in the front and in the back of your rear wheelbase, and you want to put your emergency brake on, that way everything's secure. And then whenever you jack up your vehicle, secure both sides, you take off both tires, crawl up and under this thing and inspect everything that you're dealing with, such as this particular radius arm that I'm changing. It has a hole all the way through it here, and it has holes through it down there from rust. Now that is very bad. It's going to break sometime soon, and the other side did break on this vehicle, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But whenever you get under here, you want to inspect all this stuff and see the type of damage. You want to check out your bushings and stuff, make sure if they're in good shape or not. It's like this is an I-beam bushing that goes to your stabilizer bar. And as you can see, the stabilizer bar is sitting up top, and it's in worse shape. Now, the back side of those, where that I-beam hooks in at, goes to the back side. You got one bolt that holds that thing in, and it's got the same type of rubber bushing and bolt. And if it's broke anywhere around it on the rubber, you might as well go ahead and change it. You need to change it, because essentially it can throw off your front end alignment, and it'll cause a lot of vibration. Whenever you're going down the road, if your front end vibrates and you don't know why, and everything else is good on your vehicle, then that could be it, is those bushings. So whenever you do all this stuff, you're going to be taking all of that off and you're going to be changing it. Unless if you're just changing the radius arm. If you're just changing the radius arm, then all you got to worry about is getting that bolt out right there, getting this spring shock off, getting that bolt out right there, and putting the new one on. Now you can do this one side at a time, but I recommend if you do it, then do both of them at one time if all possible. Because when you take these apart, you want to take apart your driver's side I-beam first and get it out of the way, and then you want to take apart your passenger side I-beam and get it out of the way. When you put it back on, you put the passenger side on first, then you put the driver's side on next. And the reason that is because the bolt is not going to clear if you do it one at a time. Now down here, as you can see, this is the driver's side, and I have already changed the driver's side. And that I-beam runs right up through there. But you do not have very much space where that bolt comes out for your passenger side pivot bolt. It doesn't got very much space at all. And if I go to back that thing out of there, it's going to hit this I-beam right here. So I'm going to end up having to take something on this side apart, most likely the stabilizer bar and the stabilizer bushing right here. I'm going to have to take that apart so that it will drop this I-beam down enough for me to get that bolt out of the way. But if you're just doing the passenger side, or the driver's side, I'm sorry. If you're just doing this driver's side, then it ain't entirely too bad. The worst part's getting up and under the van because the pivot bolt on this one is directly in front of your oil pan. So you got to take all this off. You got to take your tire off. You got to take your tie rod off. You take your stabilizer bar out, take it off. Then you got to take your coil spring out. You got to take your shock out. And then you got to worry about loosening up your radius arm, getting that bolt out, taking that bolt out on the back of the pivot bushing. 9 to 10, you'll usually have to pull the entire I-beam off here because these things rust up really bad. I ended up having to heat this one up with a torch just to beat that out with a sledgehammer. And these particular model vehicles, the 03 Ford Econoline 4.2 liter V6, it hasn't got no threads up top, but it's got the threads at the bottom that pulls this thing through here. So if you put an impact on it, you might be able to break it loose, but sometimes if it's as old and as rusty as this one is, I needed to heat it up and I needed to beat it out, but that bent my bolt, so I had to order a new radius bolt. Now this is my junk metal bin, and this is the old radius arm off of the driver's side. As you can see, the top half of it broke completely off, and that's where the bolt went through at, so I had to deal with all of that. Now whenever you're going through this stuff, you do your initial inspection, you decide what you want to change and what you don't want to change on this thing. The driver's side is by far the easiest because all you have to do is take apart your essential pieces, reassemble them all back together. Now me, preferably, if I'm going to take something apart, I want to fix everything I can, but the coil spring did not need replaced, so I took a wire brush to it, I cleaned it, I put me some rust treatment on it, and then I made sure to paint it with some top coat paint. Top coat paint is really, really good paint. And this, I got a CarQuest, got a lot of these parts, well, all these parts are CarQuest. And I needed my brakes whenever I got down to putting it back together, so I went ahead and got the front brakes for it. And then what I decided, I put rust treatment on it so it prevents it from rusting further. I put the top coat over that, and then after that, I put everything on. I put the truck bed liner on there. It helps repel water, it hardens up, and it made sure to coat the whole thing. And I also put a can of undercoating all around everything and the fender wheels, and this is your basic undercoating. Takes it a little while to get dry, but it comes from CarQuest, about $5 a bottle. It's not too bad. And just go ahead and order all of your pieces, everything you need. If you need bushings, you go ahead and order yourself some bushings. Now, a lot of this stuff you can decide which part store you want to go to, which place you want to buy it at, and you can even get on places, websites like cargeek.com. You know, go to those places, search the items, see what they got, see how much the shipping is, decide what you want to buy, which type of products you want. If you want to replace the springs on your vehicle, you go ahead and order those. They're like $90 or something for a set of those on partsgeek.com. You get the insulator, which is a little rubber insulator that goes at the bottom of the coil spring. Whenever I heated mine up to get that bolt out, I ended up melting it, so I had to order one. And you order the bushings, which you can get. All this stuff is just various prices. You know, decide which ones have guarantees, which ones don't, depending on who you're dealing with. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you're going to do this yourself, you're going to save a ton of money, because if you decide to fix both sides and you get new parts, all new shocks, all new everything, it's going to run you around $1,000 to do both sides of this. Now, of course, I've got a list here, you know, radius arm at a dealer. I paid $125 for the bushings and all. On both sides, it's going to run me $250. You can find them $80 each online, but that's without the bushings. I get the radius bolt, had to go to the dealer, buy all 4 of them. I had to buy 4 of them just to get the 2 I needed. But you can find them online for $12 to $20 each. Coil springs, $92 for both of them. You can get the insulator between $12 and $15. The shocks are about $75 to $40 for both of them. Advance Auto had the better quotes on those for your basic shocks. And then you got your I-beam bushings, which run $15 to $30 each. And then you got your stabilizer bar, stabilizer bar bushing, which is $20. Your brackets, which are $20 to $40. You know, just see what you need before you start this job, what you're wanting to replace, what you're not, and it's all optional. If you just want to change the main things, put the main things back on, the main parts, and leave the rest of it as is, that's up to you. But I like to test out my shocks, and I like to test out the spring, clean it all up, paint them all, undercoat everything. That way it helps to last in the future, and I ain't got to deal with any of this stuff for a longer period of time. So essentially, you want to jack these things up, stabilize them. You want to inspect every last thing, see what you absolutely need, and go ahead and order the parts that you want, which I've done myself. Then you start to disassemble and clean up all of these parts. Use degreaser, brake cleaner, some wire brushes, sander, rust treatment, top coat paint, bed liner to repel the water, you know, to prevent further rust, things of that nature if you choose to. You know, I prefer CarQuest for all of my items, like I said. And, well, we will go ahead and go here and start showing you what to do to take this thing apart. But the first thing you want to do is go ahead and secure all the parts that you need and go ahead and get everything disassembled, start cleaning them up, getting them ready to put the new parts on. Now for this van, what you need is a 13/16 lug wrench, deep weld socket breaker bar for the tires, whichever you might use there, a 13 millimeter for your slide bolt, flathead screwdriver for your speed sensor clip, and help pry apart the brake caliper, 21 millimeter for the tie rod bolt. And then you also need to remove the rotor and bearing if you choose to. If not, then you can leave it all on and you can pick it up, drag it around. It's just a little bit heavier. You need a 15 millimeter for the stabilizer bolts, 14 millimeter for the top of the shock. Ratchet wrench is the best thing to use there. You need a 19 millimeter for the bottom bolt, and 1 3/16 for the radius bolt, or an E18 female star bit to hold the bottom of the radius bolt when you're threading it back on. A 21 millimeter for the top of the bolt if you decide to break it loose that way. 1 1/8 for the rear radius arm nut. 10 millimeter for the coil spring nut. And you could use some needle nose pliers for the Carter key. You need yourself a sledgehammer. You need bottle jacks to put underneath your I-beam to help jack it, raise it up and down, get it in place just right. C-clamp for the brakes if you're going to change the brakes. 21 millimeter ratchet wrench is the best thing to use if you're going to use the driver's side to change that pivot bolt in the back, because it's a really tight fit back in there. And then you need your regular 21 millimeter socket. If you got a swivel head adapter, that's the best thing to use there. It reaches it really easy, gets it out. You need some deep creep, which you can find at CarQuest. You can spray deep creep on all these bolts and stuff after you clean them off, let it sit for a little bit, and it makes it a lot easier for everything to come back out. It's better than WD-40. It's better than PB Blaster. Get yourself a wire brush, get yourself a chisel to help knock out the bushings if you're going to do that. Get you some jack stands. And you need a ball joint press kit if at all possible. Now my local CarQuest, they run about $200, $230 for a ball joint press kit, but you can pick up a decent one at that price or on the internet also. Now me, I'm going to go borrow the press kit from CarQuest, and I will bring it right back because it takes 5 minutes to put them bushings on inside the I-beam. I mean, it's easy peasy if you got something like that to do it with. Now, you also need good lighting. Bring yourself a breaker bar, cheater bar in case you need it. Get yourself, you know, everything that you need ready to go with. And then you'll get started.